But if you are an avid listener of MLS History Retold, you were around way back when, aka last episode, when we covered Danny Sapero's goal, becoming the first goalkeeper in MLS history to score from open play. At the end of that story, we hinted at how that game set up a storied run of games, taking Red Bull to its first ever MLS Cup final. And here is how that went down. So, for those of you who inexplicably were not there when we told that story, first off, go back and listen to it. You'll really enjoy it. But second off, let's tell you what really happened. Danny Sapero got the start and goal after John Conway and Jeff Park were both suspended for performance-enhancing drug use, with just 2 games left in the season. At the time, Red Bull sat in the playoff spots with 36 points and needed at least 1 win and a little bit of help to head into that final day with some hope against top of the table Columbus and third place Chicago. Now, at the time, as Connor hinted to, MLS uses a funky little wildcard playoff system, meaning that there were 6 playoff teams that were awarded to the top 3 in each conference, and then the next best 2 teams would make up the final group of 8. And that was regardless of conference alignment. So with 2 games left, both wild card spots were up for grabs, with the Red Bulls, KC Wiz, Colorado, DC, Dallas, Toronto, Galaxy, and San Jose, which, for those of you keeping count, were all the teams that were not already in the top 6. They were all within touching distance and ready to make a run into the playoffs depending on how the results went. We already know how Danny Sapero's goal and standout performance gave Red Bull 3 points in that game against the Columbus Crew, and it put them in a great spot heading into the final day. Even though that they would go on to lose the last match of the season, we know that they got a ton of help from Colorado, DC, and Dallas, meaning that in 2008, they snuck into the last playoff spot. And because of that, they would be assigned to the Western Conference bracket in position W4. Again, an oddity at the time, but not something completely foreign to teams in 2008 MLS, because with 14 teams in the league, they each played each other 3 times in conference, 2 times out of conference, which means Red Bull had experience against all of the teams in the West they had a chance to play. Starting off with the Western Conference champions and Supporter Shield runner-up, Houston Dynamo. During that 2008 season, in the regular season, they had lost 1-0 away, but triumphed with a massive 3-0 win at home. And regardless of recent success, Red Bull were in for a fight because this Houston side was chock full of talent from front to back. They had the likes of Pat Onstead, Bobby Boswell, Ricardo Clark, Brad Davis, Dwayne De Rosario, Kai Kamara. I mean, you look anywhere on the field and they've got high-quality MLS talent in 2008. So they would need to be on their best performance in this 2-legged affair to advance to the conference finals. First match was played away from home at the wonderful Giant Stadium with a lovely NFL logo smack in the middle of the center circle, just as you expected from an MLS game. A barren football stadium housed just over 11,500 fans, and when the whistle went, the match and the series kicked off. The first half actually started in favor of Red Bull, who naturally played the more aggressive as the home side. Then things get chippy as Dane Richards was shown a yellow card for a strong foul in the 29th minute, which midfielder Brian Mullen took offense to. His reaction to said tackle was also rewarded with a yellow card for his actions. The half would end level at 0 apiece, with the team still feeling each other out. Knowing a quarter of this series was gone, it was time for somebody to step up. And who else better to step up for the New York Red Bulls than their designated player, Juan Pablo Angel. After a save from Sapero gave Red Bull possession in the 47th minute, he sent the ball upfield, eventually finding its way to John Wolyniec. Out on the left-hand side, he cut the ball back into the air across the box to find the head of Juan Pablo Angel, who nodded it home to the lower right-hand corner to give the Red Bulls a 1-0 lead. What a start for the Western Conference playoff team. The ensuing minutes were back and forth as teams exchanged chances until the 66th minute when Kai Kamara was introduced into the match. While he was slowly trying to get involved, his name was finally called in the 89th minute, where a wide service from Stu Holden would find his feet at the center of the box. He put his left foot on the ball, and it was sent into the lower left-hand corner, leveling the score at 1. Red Bull would press to get one back, but to no avail, and the first leg ended in a 1-1 draw. Now, I know what everybody's thinking. An 89th minute leveler to head into the second leg away from home to a team at the top of the Western Conference that just won back-to-back MLS Cups. This stinks of That's So Metro, doesn't it? But this would be a terrible story if that was the case. The second game kicked off away from home. They traveled to Houston to play the final leg in front of 30,000 fans at Robertson Stadium. They were eager to see another deep playoff run, maybe a third straight MLS Cup, However, this game was dominated by two people: Red Bull goalkeeper Danny Sapero and Red Bull winger and speedster Dane Richards. Early in the match, it seemed that Houston just dominated the entire first 15 minutes. They put their first chance of the match just wide 6 minutes into the game and continued that pressure all the way through until the 21st minute, when Red Bull would settle in and find their own chance that hit the post in the 21st. The affair was cagey, knowing that any mistake could mean the end of your club's playoff hopes that year. Then, the breakthrough. In the 25th minute, a long pass from childhood favorite Sinisa Ubi-Parapovic seems to miss its intended target, a checking Juan Pablo Angel. But any ball played into space is a good ball for Dane Richards. He picked up the pace, picked up the ball, gets in behind Wade Barrett, created separation off the dribble, went one-on-one with Pat Onstead, and blasted it over his right shoulder to give Red Bull a 1-0 lead and a 2-1 aggregate scoreline. Now, Red Bull knew they needed to keep the pressure because the away goal rules did not apply. So all Houston had to do was match their score to stay in it. As Houston pushed to try and get one back, the game got stretched very quickly. And just a few minutes later, it was Houston on the attack again. Time for Sapero to earn his stripes. A service from the left side found the head of an unmarked Wayne De Rosario, who put a powerful header on goal. But Sapero was equal to it. In the ensuing attack for Red Bull, it was time for more of the Dane Richards show. He picked up the ball on the halfway line, flicked it over the top of Wade Barrett, gets down the line, and serves it into the box, where it struck Ricardo Clark's outstretched arm, awarding a very easy penalty to New York Red Bulls, which Juan Pablo Angel converted confidently to the left-hand side. Now, just 2 minutes after that, a hopeful long ball skipped into Sapero, who ventured out of his box to play it with his feet. His first touch was as bad as Connor's, and it deflected off danger man Brian Ching and back towards the empty net. Luckily for Red Bull and Danny Sapero, the ball bounced up high enough for Sapero to recover and claim the ball over Brian Ching before he could put it away. This first half would end 2-0 in favor of the good guys, with Houston needing a massive second half to keep their playoff dream alive, and they came out knowing that. Headed into the second half, it was all Houston, who had the ball in Red Bull's half for pretty much the entire game. The first 10 minutes were a massive wake-up call to Red Bull. At the 52nd minute mark, Kai Kamara picked up a loose ball and slid it into Brian Ching, who was 1v1 with Danny Sapero 12 yards out. He came off his line nice and quick to make another smart stop and keep hold of the 2-goal lead, just for another chance 5 minutes later from a corner that Sapero kept out athletically by tipping the ball off of the bar. He clearly recovered well from the near mishap in the first half, but needed to stay strong because Houston were not stopping. Unfortunately for Houston, it was one of those nights where you were just inches off of everything you tried to do, missing tap-ins from crosses by the length of a toenail or the aglet on a shoelace. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, and Red Bull knew that. At 75 minutes, once again, it was Sapero keeping a wicked Brad Davis effort out from distance by getting his fingertips to the ball and tipping it over the bar. That led to a corner, which was sent in, bounced around multiple players, and fell to the feet of an unmarked Dynamo player, whose effort from 12 yards was kick saved by Daniel Sapero yet again. Not bad for a rookie who's thrust in last minute because of a PED scandal. After absorbing so much pressure on the defensive end, something had to give. And give it did, but not in Houston's favor. At halftime, Wade Barrett, who had been tortured by Dane Richards all match, was replaced by a bit more pacey Corey Ash in hopes of nullifying the impact of the Jamaican winger's speed. However, those hopes were squashed at the 81st minute, when Dane Richards picked up the ball in space and avoided not one, not two, but 3 tackles from different Dynamo players in an all-out sprint to the Houston penalty area. After collecting the ball, he squared it to an on-rushing John Wolenek, who tapped it home to secure the win for the New York Red Bulls. After the elation of this match, one which practically no one expected Red Bull to come out victoriously, it was easy to forget that they had to turn around and play another match out west in just 6 days against Real Salt Lake, the third-place finishers in the West. They had just beaten Chivas USA 3-2 on aggregate to make it to this conference finals, and in the regular season, Red Bull had fared well against RSL, winning 2-1 at home and picking up a 1-1 draw away. However, they would need to find a way to get all 3 points on the road in this one-legged conference final if they wanted a chance at their first ever MLS Cup final. Like Houston, RSL boasted an impressive side at Rio Tinto Stadium, and they traveled to a packed-out 20K fans to take on the likes of Nick Raimondo, Jameson Olave, Kyle Beckerman, Will Johnson, Clint Mathis, Javier Morales, and Yura Movsisian. At 6 p.m. on the 14th of November, Jair Marufo blew his whistle, and the boys were off. Strangely enough, it was Red Bull on the front foot from the start away from home, as John Wolenek got on the end of a long service and volleyed one towards the goal that Nick Rimando did really well to keep out down to his right-hand side. Then trouble brews, as in the 23rd minute, childhood favorite, Bubi Parapovic, was forced off with an injury to be replaced by Jorge Rojas, who had played all of just 11 matches for the New York Red Bulls to this point. But the substitution cards, and yes, I say cards and not boards because MLS was not fancy enough for electronic boards at this point, went up and change was made. And from the instant that change was made, RSL went on the attack. Yura Movsisyan picked up the ball on the left-hand side, cut inside, and fired a shot that was stopped very well by Danny Sapero. Not a great vibe after the injury. Nerves were clearly building for Red Bull, but they were about to be calmed as a ball from Dave Vandenberg was played into John Wolnick on the left-hand side. He did very, very well to hold off the strong Jameson Alave's challenge and turn in towards goal. He got to the end line and squared it to an on-rushing Juan Pablo Angel, but it was too close for Nick Rimando, who collapsed to his left and parried it away. However, the ball fell right to the foot of Dave Vandenberg, who continued his run from the defensive end and tapped it into an empty net to give Red Bull the 1-0 lead and 1 foot in the door of the MLS Cup final. Elation spread all across the Red Bull bench and players on the pitch, but they knew that they had to see this out because the last thing anybody wanted to do is try their luck in penalties against Nick Rimando. Elation just turned to near dread in the 38th minute when Javier Morales stood over a free kick from 35 yards, floated a ball into the box looking for the foot of Clint Cletus Mathis. He swung at it and missed, and the ball hit off the post and came out. Just a shoelace on that ball, and this story may not even be told today. With a little bit of luck, Red Bull will go into the break up a goal. And by the 55th minute of the game, Red Bull was in full bunker mode. 11 men behind the ball, defending for their lives, meaning it was time for more of the Sapero show. Robbie Russell picked up the ball on the right side, cuts in, and hits a Trivela shot towards the Red Bull goal. Sapero was alert to the danger and parried it away for a corner. RSL would continue on for the rest of the half, playing good combo splits off of Movsisyan and Javimo, but could not find the equalizer. In the 70th minute, Movsisyan thought he had it, as the combo split sent him 1v1 with Sapero, but his chipped effort was brushed away by the fingertips of Sapero, keeping Red Bull just barely in the lead. While RSL continued to push, and much like the Houston match, the chances they were missing was by a layer of leather on their boots. Red Bull's MLS Cup final hopes looked to be done and dusted in the 80th minute, when RSL gets in behind again with Robbie Finley, who beats an on-rushing Sapero to the ball and squared it for a wide-open Will Johnson on the back stick. Unmarked with an open goal, he sprinted as fast as he could to get to the ball, slid with an outstretched leg to meet it, and just put it off the post and out as Red Bull scrambled to clear. Red Bull hung on by the skin of their teeth as RSL had one last gasp in the 94th minute, sending a long ball forward and everybody into the box. It was crossed in, bounced around until it fell to the foot of the ever-dangerous Javier Morales. His first effort was blocked, but fell right back to him. He took a touch, it fell to his left foot, and he hit it. With pace and power, and time froze as everybody on both sides, including Danny Sapero, watched the ball fly towards the goal. Somebody in Red Bull land must have sold their soul for this match to give us the luck that we had, because instead of flying into the bottom corner, as we in Red Bull land have become so accustomed to, it hit the post again and came out. Jair Marufo blew for full time, and the Red Bull, through luck, magic, and probably some backdoor deals with the devil, won the Western Conference and made it to their first and only MLS Cup final to date.